Welcome, dear Sangha members, to our part 8, I believe, of our Path to Awakening with our Venerable Khenpo Tenzin. We will begin today's talk with opening prayers on page 4 of our Yellow Garchen Buddhist Institute prayer book. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings.
Pamondo ba jawan dogong ba kajua lama nanje da jo je dan zara dam je da lama la ba la ye je zo zo lo zo yon den jam zang ala tin de dong jen de ba ge le zo zhen jen za ba lama je je ku zong do je zen lam da ge ju lam ben da ge den ba da zen je je dong jia jen bon de ba zen je la de zo the hidele dear my friends. This morning we received Bodhisattva vow, and our teaching series comes in Bodhisattvas, 10 Bhumis and 5 paths. So this is auspicious. Today I will teach on these paths and the Bhumis according to the Sutras. We must begin with the paths first. Actually, path is like a road. If we are going to somewhere, whether we are going on foot or driving a car or riding a horse, we depend on our road. Similarly, when we practice the Dharma to get to the stage of a Buddha, we are also depending on our road. For that reason, we have the concepts of paths. There are basically 3 paths. The path of the Sharavakas, the path of practical Buddhas, and the Bodhisattvas path. Now we are concerned with the Bodhisattvas path because we are Bodhicitta vehicle practitioners. According to the Sutra, there are 5 paths. The first path is the path of accumulation. The second is the path of joining or connection. The third is the path of seeing. The fourth is path of meditation or cultivation. And the 5th is the path of beyond training. These 5 paths covered entire process from sincerely beginning Dharma practice to complete enlightenment. So first we will begin with the path of accumulation. The reason this path is called The path of accumulation is that on this path, practitioners have to accumulate merit as vast as in ocean. That is why it is called the path of accumulation. We accumulate this merit through our body, speech, and mind. If we recite a single mantra syllable, and we practice through our dualistic perception, all this practice is included in the path of accumulation. We can say that we are on the path of accumulation, but it is quite hard to say that we have the realization of the path of accumulation. The path of accumulation also has three further categories: the lower, medium, and higher paths of accumulation. These depend on the practitioner's compassion and bodhicitta. On this path, we have to practice the 4 applications of mindfulness, or the 4 essential recollections. We start with practicing the application of mindfulness of the body. For practicing this, we have to meditate on or watch our body. Actually, we call it mindfulness, but this is also related to wisdom. We have to analyze. It is also analytical meditation. Why are we going to practice the application of mindfulness of the body first? Because we are in the desire realm, so we have a very strong attachment to our body. As well as you well know, we take care of our bodies more than anything. The reason is we are attached to this body in order to purify this attachment. We have to practice the application of mindfulness of body. This is in main point. Then how to practice is we identify this body is clean. This body is clean. We don't directly say that it is clean, but in our mind we just label it as clean and permanent. We also don't directly believe that our body is permanent, but we think that the body we had last year is the same as the one we have now, and then we have grasping to it. Whenever we say I, we automatically point to our body. So that's why we have to examining in detail from the crown to the feet. Whereas it is purity, where it is a permanence, and which part of the body is I. We examine, and then we find emptiness, which means our body is a gathering of many particles. Everything is just interdependent, and because it is interdependent, it is impermanent. Because if two things are gathered from different sides, it is quite possible they will disappear. They will separate. Uh, and then we find our body is not clean. First, because this body is established through blood, pulse, bones, and lymph. Uh, then, where is the purity? How is it clean? We meditate in this way, and then it reduces our attachment to our body or someone else's body. If we successfully practice, then we will start to notice there is no I. This realization is not 100% the complete realization. It is just a general concept sense of selflessness. But this realization will arise. The second is the application of mindfulness based on sentient beings. Based on sensations or feeling. The reason we practice this is that we are attached to temporary happiness, and sometimes we misunderstand and believe that suffering is also happiness. Even the feeling of equanimity is actually included in the feeling of suffering. But we don't really know that the feeling of equanimity is also suffering, means it is impermanent. So then we watch the three feelings of happiness, suffering, and equanimity from our head to our feet, noticing them in our body or in our mind. Either is fine, and we see that temporary happiness turns into suffering. For example, if we have a drug addiction, you take some drugs, and this is a temporary happiness, but then it changes into suffering. Same with alcohol, same with feeling well, and then male and the female union. We think that is the highest happiness, but this also turn into suffering. And then we have to know that the feeling of suffering is suffering too, which means we have to know the cause of suffering. Buddhas know what is the cause of suffering, uh, and they don't adopt the cause of suffering. But samsaric beings, uh, don't care about uh, cause of suffering. We adopt the cause of suffering, and then we try to reject the result of the result of this. But then we cannot. That's why we are suffering. So we have to know that suffering is suffering. The feeling of equanimity, which is Suffering means, for example, in the morning we eat breakfast, and before lunch, our stomach is not too full, but we are not too hungry. It seems we have a balance. But then, if we don't eat lunch, we will be hungry. That means this feeling of balance transforms into hunger. And then sometimes the temperature is nice, not so hot, not so cold. We are attached to this and we remain in it for a little while, but then perhaps it will become uh, too hot or become too cold. Then feeling of temporary happiness is also impermanent. Therefore, uh, there, therefore, their suffering. That's why if yesterday we were happy because we played games or made jokes, we were very happy. But then today, yesterday has become history. We only remember a part of it. There are lots of examples like this. If you eat a sweet candy while that object remains on your tongue, you feel good, but after it melts, then nothing. This means it is temporary happiness. And then next is the application of mindfulness. Uh, Application of mindfulness of the mind. Uh, this has to do with the six consciousness, six consciousnesses, which we think are real and true. For instance, the eye consciousness, the air consciousness, the tongue consciousness, the consciousness of a body, the mind consciousness. We follow after this sense consciousness, and then we label their external object as good, bad, yes, no. We label a lot. This is that, and that is this, and so on. But they are also impermanent, and they are selflessness. They are emptiness. They are also transformed into suffering. The reason we are practicing on their becoming mindful of them is that we have to realize that all these six consciousness are selflessness, and we have to realize that these six consciousness are a delusion. Right now, we think we can we can prove that what we see is right. But if somebody says they see two moons in the sky, then we say this is illusory. But we see the one moon in the sky, we say this is the real moon, because we all see it. So that means we have a dualistic perception, which is our consciousness. And then we hear some good words, and we are happy. When we heard bad words, we are unhappy. That means we think that sound, what we heard through our ear consciousness, is true. But if this air consciousness does not truly exist, then this outside sound, of course, does not truly exist. Then there is no way to have attachment to sweet words and aversion to harsh words. And then same with the noise consciousness. We have some fragrance and we say, oh, this is a very nice smell. This is attachment. And then we got to the toilet or somewhere similar and we cover our nose. We say, oh, it smells so bad. This means we have a dualistic perception. And then we follow that, we follow the nose consciousness. And same with food. We say, oh, this is delicious or this taste is so strange. Then we adopt and reject. But everything does not truly exist. Everything is impermanent, not imbued with self. They are selflessness and emptiness. In order to realize that, we meditate on the application of mindfulness of mind, and then apply mindfulness of mental objects. This is actually the same as the other, in that through this practice we have to realize emptiness, selflessness, impermanence, suffering. But here, particularly, we have to know our afflictive emotions. When we give rise to attachment, then we just watch the nature of attachment. We realize that the nature of this attachment does not permanently exist, that it has no self, and that it is not pure, clean. Often we have attachment, we don't think, we just follow it. We accept attachment as pure. That's why we adopt it. But if we rethink what it is about, we realize attachment is an object for rejoicing. Rejecting. Not for adopting. Same with anger, same with ignorance. If we don't analyze, if we don't think about that, then naturally we think they are for adopting, good, clean, pure, and permanent. So then through the practice of the four application of mindfulness, we think again, what is attachment? Impure, impermanent, not self. And then anger is the same. And then distraction, agitation, and dullness. And then the 20 afflictive emotions. 6 root of afflictive emotions and 20 branch of afflictive emotions. In brief, at that time, as we practice, we have to watch afflictive emotions, which are attachment, anger, ignorance, distraction, agitation, dullness, and so on. So we focus on these and we should notice that the nature of these things. Of course, at this stage, we cannot realize non duality. I mentioned nature, but it does not mean their non non-dual nature. It means their own nature. For example, what is the nature of fire? Uh, it is to burn. What is the nature of water? Oh, it is to flow. And examine how this works. But then you should consider whether this mindfulness or not. Yes, it is, but then you think it is not mindfulness. Think it is not mindfulness because as we examine, we think aloud. You are right. We are going to think aloud, but in this case, mindfulness means when we think clearly, straightly. This is mindfulness. It is like threading a needle. So there is activity, but it is completely unwavering. If you don't have this power, then it becomes like when you first learn how to ride or ride a bicycle. When you first learn how to ride, you cannot go straightly or, of course, peacefully. Once you start to move your legs a little, perhaps you fall to the right, or you fall to the left. So you cannot go even 1 or 2 feet. This meditation is the same, but then as you train, you become free as you ride. You ride the bicycle. You can stay on the seat in a Vajra posture, and still you will not fall. Somebody did that. They didn't hold the handles of the bicycle, but they did not fall. They have freedom. They can jump on the rocks. They make different shows that almost seem miraculous. Similarly, you will improve in this way. So the real mindfulness is that. Right now, we think mindfulness means calm down. Don't think anything. This part is true. Sometimes when we are training, but if we remain on this, it will only help us when we are depressed, or sometimes when we have too much fear or strong suffering. At that time, it will help a little bit to remain quietly mindful. But it cannot remove the suffering entirely. But to practice in this way that I'm teaching, it will purify entirely our problems. This is not my method. This is Buddha's method. So we are going to practice these 4 applications of mindfulness in this way. And then we should notice do we have the realization of the path of accumulation or not? And then we say, oh no, because we don't have this kind of realization. And you are right, we don't have it, so you should practice. But if you do have it, that is wonderful. That is imaho. Then you are ready to improve that. So then I will teach the next steps. When we practice meditating on the four application of mindfulness, there are 5 faults that we need to be careful about. They are laziness, forgetting instructions, agitated mind, and dullness, not utilizing the antidote when we give rise to different thoughts. And thoughts distract our mind. And then analyzing even when thoughts do not arise. This is also a fault. So these 5 are the 5 faults of meditation. Laziness means that, for example, when we are on retreat and we have sessions for meditation or practicing in meditation class, at that time we are lazy. There are 3 different kinds of laziness. The first is when we meditate for a little while and then we think, oh, I'm going to make a phone call. That is important. This is what we call the laziness of clinging to unwholesome actions. Unwholesome. Thank you. The second kind of laziness is discouraged mind. We think, oh, I can't do it. I can't meditate. Even if I try, I will not accomplish it. I don't have enough wisdom. I have no Dharma knowledge. I have nothing. This is also laziness. And then other kind of laziness is slothfulness. Slothfulness or feeling sluggish or having inertia. You think, oh, today I can't meditate. I will do it next week. When next week comes, you think, oh, I will do it next month. Then next month, you think, oh, I will do it next year. This putting off of practice is last kind of laziness. So these 3 are what we call the 3 laziness. The fault of forgetting is that when we meditate, we have different distractions because of different thoughts. The Guru has already given you some instruction on what to do during agitated mind or what to do during dullness and what to do when you remain in samadhi, in meditation. And also he or she has instructed what to do if you have a physical problem. And if you have a problem with thoughts, what should you do? There are a lot of instructions how to improve, how to increase how to accomplish, but then uh, you forget when you are ready to utilize them. Because when you listened, you did not listen carefully. Maybe you think listening to the Dharma is not important. Yet, Gampopa said, until you have realized the first Bhumi and you have reached the path of seeing, you should listen and learn Dharma. You must listen and learn. Then we notice how important learning is in that moment. When we need to utilize instructions because of the faults of forgetting, then you can't keep going, you cannot progress your practice. The next fault is that during your concentration, your agitated mind bothers you, and also too much dullness, like falling asleep. These two things we actually count as one. And in this circumstance, we cannot apply, you cannot apply your mind to the Dharma. We cannot apply our mind to the Dharma because we have lost our freedom. And then the next fault is when we have dullness and agitation in agitated mind. You don't try to apply the antidote to this. But sometimes your mind remains naturally. And there's no agitation or dullness and so on. But still you try to apply antidotes or check on your mind. That is also a fault when it comes to maintaining meditation. So these are the important to know. The 8 types of attention are the antidote to the 5 faults. The first of these is devotion. Devotion has 3 classifications. First is devotion that arises after knowing the qualities of the object of faith. These arise when you notice, for example, the many qualities that come from meditation on these 4 applications of mindfulness. Another type of devotion is yearning faith. Yearning faith is when you have in aspiration to achieve these qualities. Then there is the third kind of devotion, trusting faith. This is when you trust in the three jewels and 4 application of mindfulness that they never betray you. You think you must gain realization. You must achieve it. Mm, The second type of attention uh, that is in antidote to the 5 faults is aspiration. There are also 3 categories of aspiration. The first is you have aspiration that you are going to do practice, and you are very happy to do practice. Second is that you would not leave your practice or stop it. You would not separate from this practice. Your wish is to continuously meditate on it. Then the third is having a kind of diligence, thinking I would like to meditate on this or do that practice. The third kind of attention is diligence. Diligence has two classifications. The first is a devoted application, and the second is a persistence or the diligence of consistent application. The first one is your mind of virtue or your enthusiasm for Dharma practice. The second is that you continuously practice on it. So these are the two kinds of diligence. The fourth kind of attention is plancy, which means that you can freely turn your body and mind towards virtue or meditation. It has two classifications. First is having a completely trained body, which means you can free your body for the Dharma practice. And second is completely trained mind, which means you can direct your mind towards Dharma. The fifth type of attention is mindfulness. Mindfulness means shamatha. Shama means peaceful, and tha means to undistractedly maintain. It is like a candle light flame, which continuously remove darkness and it completely still and undisturbed by wind. So then mindfulness should be continuous. Next kind of attention is attentiveness, which means when you remain in mindfulness, then your attentiveness just single pointedly watch whether any kind of thoughts arise or not. It is like a secret guard who watches everyone who enters the room. The responsibility of attentiveness is to just watch and see whether or not there are thoughts. That's all. But if thoughts ar- if thoughts arise, then suddenly it sends a message to mindfulness. The seventh type of attention is reflection. When attentiveness becomes loose, then reflection supports it. The eighth type of meditation is equanimity. If your meditation is going well, and at that time you maintain balance without over examining or losing focus. This is the eighth type of attention, equanimity. This is an important point. In brief, how can the eight kinds of attentiveness be the antidote to the five faults? Devotion, aspiration, diligence, and plancy. These four are the antidote of laziness. Mindfulness is the antidote of forgetting instructions. Attentiveness is antidote to dullness and agitation. Reflection helps when you don't use antidote to find the right antidote when you need them. For example, when dullness arises, then we focus more strongly or clearly. Or sometimes when we are inside our own room, when dullness arises, we externally open the window or the window cover and we turn on the light. And let a little air inside. And still, if it does not help, then you can go outside the building or your retreat hut, relax for a few minutes, and drink water. And then you put on thinner clothes. And if you have turned on the heat, you turn it off. If you are meditating on an object which is brown or black, then you change your focus to a white or light colored object. And then when your mind is agitated, at that time you should do the opposite. For example, if you have opened the windows, you close them and wear thicker clothes and focus on object which less light colors. If you put on thick clothes and still it does not help, then you can eat heavy food. So there are many ways. These processes are the antidote of dullness and agitated mind. The attention of equanimity is the antidote to try to hard by over analyzing or checking on your mind when your mind meditation is going well. Then there are the four right exertions. They are to avoid giving rise to non-virtue qualities, to abandon the non-virtues that have arising, to give rise to virtues qualities, and to avoid letting the virtue that have arising degenerate. On the path of accumulation, we also practice the four limbs of miracles: the miracles of aspiration, the miracles of effort, the miracle of thoughts, and the miracle of analysis. The reason we call them limbs is that wherever we have to go, we have to go is related to our four legs, our two legs. They carry. Sorry. No, someone may have, right? They carry us wherever we have to go. Similarly, wherever when whoever practice this well and attain the realization and can quickly move from the path of accumulation to the path of journey. That's why they are called limbs. In brief, in brief, maybe we need four legs in the future, right? Two legs, four legs for Buddha's stage, for going Buddha's stage. Okay. In brief, the path of accumulation has three divisions, which are the lower, middling, and great part of accumulations. Uh, okay. If you are laughing, then I can't stop. Mm. Oh. That's good. Good health. Laughing is also meditation. Laughing meditation. Future we will do this. Okay. So what I said? Oh yeah, the part of accumulation has three classifications. These are different layers or different levels. So the uh, so these divisions are made according to how we practice. Uh, the different methods that I have already mentioned, like the four application of mindfulness, the four limbs of miracles. First, they are practiced. Second, they are increased. And third, they are developed completely. According to these, we say there are three parts of accumulations, not three legs. uh, okay. Then uh, next is part of journey. Actually, uh, this is the fruition of the part of accumulation. Uh, these parts are interrelated. Why do we call them different paths? Path, path or path, paths indicates indicate the development of the realizations of practitioners. Practitioners who practice well on the path of accumulation and accomplish all of its realizations reach the path of journey. The realizations of the path of journey are higher than the realizations of path of accumulation. So practitioners on the path of journey can purify more afflictive emotions than practitioners who are on the path of accumulation. The path of journey also has three different divisions, the lower, middling, and higher. Within each of these, there are also further divisions. But on the path of journey, everything is included with the four main divisions. We need to know this part. It is more important than the other divisions. These four are first, the feeling of warmth on the path of journey. Sometimes we say that fire is a metaphor for wisdom. And sometimes the name of these divisions are given in according with the practitioner's feeling. Here they have a special feeling of joy. And also they have a special wisdom. For example, if we can see fire flame somewhere and we approach the fire, we can feel its warmth. Similarly, those who have reached the path of journey are also very close to the path of seeing. So that's why they have a special feeling. That is what we call the feeling of warmth on the path of journey. The second division is the virtues, or what is it? Second division is the virtues roof. As we accumulate merit on the path of accumulation, there are many parts of a practice, right? Like the 4 applications of mindfulness and so on. So practitioners on the path of journey have reached the height of the realizations of this practice. That means they have almost completely accomplished this practice. This is what is called the virtues roof. And the third, there is the division of newly attained patience, which is not afraid of the profound dharma of emptiness of the path and accumulation. These practitioners have realized emptiness almost manifestly, but still there are some obscurations. But they are not afraid of that emptiness. Otherwise, some are afraid of this kind of experience because they think, oh, there is emptiness. Then there is nothing. There is no cause and effect. That's why some are afraid. But practitioners in this division are not afraid of any kind of experience that arises. These experiences cannot disturb their practice. And also they are not worried about the reborn in lower realms. When reached the virtuous roof, the reason we call this the virtuous roof, because this is the height of ordinary path. Height of the ordinary path. Then last, the division of supreme dharmas. This means these practitioners are almost ready to give rise to the realizations of path of seeing. And also this division is called supreme dharma because their activities are completely beyond the mundane activities. Right now, our practice, no matter how much we try to practice purely, clearly, still it is related to mundane activities. Of course, not completely, but for instance, we recite and meditate for 1 hour. Right before or after or in the middle of it, we give rise to different ordinary thoughts, regular thoughts. Regular thoughts interrupt. But these practitioners don't have this kind of obscurations. For that reason, they are in the division of supreme dharma. They are in the division of supreme dharma. On the path of jonin, we practice the 5 powers. These are the power of faith, the power of diligence, the power of mindfulness, power of samadhi, and the power of wisdom. These are achieved through their practice. Right now we may have some faith, diligence, mindfulness, and so on, but we don't have the qualities of these powers. Big difference. Next is the path of seeing. Here, path of seeing means seeing the nature of Dharma manifestly, which one could not see during the path of accumulation and the path of journey. Also, on the path of seeing, one realizes selflessness manifestly. And at this time, the practitioner practices the 7 branches of enlightenment. The 7 branches of enlightenment are mindfulness, perfect discrimination of the Dharma, wisdom, effort, joy, suppleness, concentration, and equanimity. We call them the 7 branch of enlightenment because they are direct reflection of primordial wisdom, and they focus on the nature of phenomena. By nature of phenomena, I mean selflessness. For example, if you focus on suffering, you not only focus on the suffering itself, but the nature of that suffering, the nature of suffering is emptiness. And then be there mindfully, so you be aware of that mindfully. Also, the cause of suffering and other truths. Practitioners on the path of seeing focus on these one by one and realize their emptiness manifestly. Manifestly realize, and we realize through logically something like we say, oh, the behind of this mountain has a fire because we see smoke on the top of mountain. This realization is not manifest realization. We will not able to realize that manifestly. So manifest the manifest, you know, right? You know, but it does not mean all eyes. That means their wisdom knows. So right now, the most of our wisdom is like a very very small. So whenever we focus on the object, we suddenly appears colors or shape or form or something like that, and then right after, perhaps we will attach there, perhaps we will aversion. So that means very very lower understanding. It's really very low. And then through meditation and practice, first we learn about this, and then we can think. When we think on that, we see this object, and we not always see only colors and these things. We see little part of impermanence, part of interdependence, and something like that. And then slowly improve our realizations. Then we realize the natural emptiness. So then, how much our realization increase, then it changes a big in our mind. This result is really, really the unfathomable. So that's where is right now. Often we are talk, practice, meditate. We are doing that for reason is we are over. We try to achieve this stage. So so on the path of seeing, the practicing the 7 branch of enlightenment, these 7 branch of enlightenment, which are also called the 7 cause of enlightenment, they are very important qualities. Mindfulness means one can retain Buddha's teachings for hundreds of years. Right now we listen to teachings today, and tomorrow or hours later we forget. So the difference is that with mindfulness, you can keep it in mind for a very long time. We are familiar with samsaric activities. That's why if last year somebody used some harsh words, we do not forget it. But this morning, a guru gave us some special instructions, and right now we have already forgetting it. This is the mother thinking beings. We don't want to criticize them because they are lost their freedom into the ignorance. So that's where, because we are more familiar with the samsaric activities. So then, when we progress on the path of seeing, especially if we practice well, the above instructions given by our gurus, then we will have these seven branches of enlightenment. So, practitioners who reach the path of seeing attain the first bhumi. This is very important. Often, I don't know how often you focus about bhumi and path. So, these bhumis and paths are also first time you heard about that. I don't know if you are same as my feeling. When I first heard about these things, I always think it is somebody's paths, somebody's bhumis. But this is not true. These are our realizations. So we call the Arya beings. When people become Arya being, practitioners become Arya being, that means the realization increased, right? In brief, on the path of seeing, we purify 112 cognitive obscurations. These are these cognitive obscurations are have a lot of layers, like a skin of trees. So our dharma nature is like a inner object of tree. But then we have to, if we are going to appear that, then we have to take off each and every the skins of tree, like that. In brief, on the path of seeing, we purify 112 cognitive obscurations. As we purify them, we progress on the path of seeing. All these cognitive obscurations are included in the three constant fetters to be abandoned on the path of seeing. These are speculated, false notion of ego. Notion of ego. Holding bad ethics or discipline and afflicted doubt. When you completely purify these three obscurations, then you attain the first bhumi and accomplish successfully path of seeing. And you are ready to go forward on the path of meditation. After the path of seeing is the path of meditation. So let you know, right now I'm introduce 5 paths. Once you have achieved the path of seeing, many of your conceptions are purified, along with the subtle consciousness. But still something remains to be purified. And that is what is purifying during the path of meditation. Actually, during the path of meditation, there are 4 114 things to abandon by meditation. They are all included in the nine-fold process of abandonment. Then on the path of meditation, the realization of the noble eightfold path will arise. The noble eightfold path consists of the right view, which means attain the realization of subtle consciousness. So then the practitioner's trust becomes unshakable. Then next is correct understanding or right understanding. This means the practitioner remains in contemplation and then comes out of contemplation, but does not lose the realizations that they gained while they were in samadhi. That is the meaning of right or pure understanding. Then next is right or pure speech. This means the practitioner can explain exactly what they have realized, which means they can tell others purely what they have realized, and people will understand very clearly their realizations. Next is pure or right action. This means the practitioner has given up non-virtues of body, speech, and mind. After that is right livelihood, which means they don't have wealth, which comes from non-virtue, like robbing or stealing or buying things very cheaply and selling them for a lot of money. We call this impure livelihood. It is the opposite of right livelihood. Next is right effort, which means these practitioners meditate dedicatedly for long periods of time in order to purify obscurations of the path of meditation without becoming discouraged or tired. Next is right mindfulness. This is the union of vipassana and shamatha, and it purifies the obscuration of meditation. Next is right meditative observation or the shamatha, which means clear away the obscurations to clairvoyance. So from that time onward, they have a wonderful clairvoyance. And then next is the path of fulfillment, or the path of no more learning, or the path of the beyond training. It is at this time that all the paths are accomplished. So this is the Buddha's stage. But all the paths lead to this point gradually. For example, on the path of accumulation, even if we give rise to mind kindness in a moment, and we recite a single mani mantra, or we just paint some colors on a statue or stupa, or we help someone who is elderly, who is trying to stand up, we help them get up from the ground, or if a bird is thirsty or hungry, we give a small piece of bread or a drop of water, or if someone has lost their way, we help them find the right path. Or if somebody is looking for a guest house, we help to show them where it is. Or even kindly saying good morning or good afternoon. All of these are included on the path of accumulation. And then all of these lower paths, for example, the four application of mindfulness, these practices grow and mature us just as we do in life. First, our parents energies gather, and then our consciousness reigns. That combination of our parents' energies, and then slowly these grow in mother's womb. And then our mother gives birth, and then we become a child, a teenager, an adult, and then old. Like it like that we grow. Or another good example is in apple tree. First there is the seed of the apple tree, and then slowly this sprouts and grows a trunk, and then branches and leaves, and then fruits. And then the fruits mature, and then people can eat them. It gives energy. The paths are like this. There are lots of explanations that are deeper than the ones I have given today, but I think it would be quite hard to understand those if you don't know about Dharma deeply. This part is quite hard to understand, but the main thing our point here is the realizations. So you have to practice. Through your practice, these realizations will occur, and at the same time, you have to purify a lot. It is like our clothes have dirt, and the gross layers of dirt we can easily wash, even without soup or soap. It it comes off when we wash it. But then the subtle layers of dirt we have to make more effort to wash. Similarly, on these higher paths, practitioners still have subtle obscurations, perceptions, conceptions, graspings. So that's why they have to more precisely practice. Then their realization becomes very brilliant. Now we will begin discussing the Bhumis. On the five paths, hopefully you uh, are clear about five paths. On the Sutra path, there are the Bodhisattvas, Bhumis, as well as the 11th Bhumi, which is the Bhumi of Buddha. At that time, Bodhisattvas become enlightened. Bhumi refers to both the foundation of realization and the realization itself. The name Bhumi was given through Mother Earth. For example, if you buy 1 acre, that includes a river, then you can utilize that water freely, and you can establish something there like a house. If you buy a mountain, then you can establish wonderful things there, and this mountain is your own. Then if you buy thousands of acres, a big piece of land, then you can create a brilliant mandala there, and so on. Because first you have freedom, and then this ground has the quality for you to do that. And this ground provides the base for you to do that. You can establish many things. So, similarly, when you reach each and every bhumi, at that time some qualities spontaneously arise, and others you can practice. And in this way, you can spontaneously increase your practice and realizations. And then the bhumi is also part of the realization. And this is what we call a bhumi. And the bhumi and the paths are related to each other. I already introduced the 5 paths. So when we begin learning about bhumis, we have to know 3 things are the important. First, what is the essence of bhumis? What is the definition of bhumis? And what are the divisions of bhumis? So first, the essence of bhumi is wisdom that knows the selflessness of phenomena. Also, its essence is higher samadhi. There are the realizations of a practitioner who has reached the bhumis, and then the definition of bhumi is that each and every one of these bhumis has such a wonderful qualities for practitioners who reach them. So the bhumis are the foundation of all of these qualities. The qualities of realization, the qualities of compassion, bodhicitta, and wisdom. There are lots of qualities, and the bhumi are the foundation of these qualities. And also they are the source of all these qualities. There are 10 divisions of bhumis. These are the bodhisattva's bhumis. The first thought, first through the 10th, then the 11th is what we call in the Sutra the bhumi, Buddha's bhumi. It is called universal light or consistent illumination. Then there are different layers from the first bhumi to the 10th. The differences in the bhumis are in the power of luminosity, the power of development, and the power of accomplishing. The reason for these differences are that on each bhumi, practitioners have to purify subtle consciousness, subtle obscurations, subtle karmas, and subtle identifications. And how these are purified are through luminosity. The power of luminosity becoming clearer and clearer, and also power of development of practice and realization increasing. And it is the same for bodhisattvas' wish being accomplished step by step through purifying subtle obscurations and giving rise to new realizations. So the differences are in that. Now I will introduce each bhumi one by one. The first bhumi we call the bhumi of joy, which means the level of supreme joy. A bodhisattva who attains this bhumi has realized emptiness, which they have never realized before. And at that time, they have more power to benefit and help mother sentient beings. For these reasons, this bhumi is called the level of supreme joy. Bodhisattvas who reach this bhumi practice the perfection of generosity more of the 10 perfections. They also practice the other 9 perfections, but the emphasis is on generosity. Some of these bodhisattvas practice generosity through non-duality, while those who have already realized emptiness but who have not completely realized emptiness do not yet remain in non-duality. There are also different layers of realization. All these bodhisattvas have many qualities. For example, their aspiration have special power, so they can see many Buddhas each time. They can make aspirations, and also they can travel to many pure lines through simply wishing to go there. Then these bodhisattvas purify many non-virtues, which are to be abandoned through insight, and also cognitive obscurations, which have 3 layers. They purifies the first layer of the cognitive obscurations, and then bodhisattvas on the first bhumi have freedom when it comes to rebirth. They can choose, for example, to be reborn as a Chakravarti king. These bodhisattvas also have great power to remain in samadhi, and all the powers and qualities of these bodhisattvas are for the benefit of mother sentient beings. If they are reborn as a Chakravarti king, this is also for the benefit of mother sentient beings. And they can remain in samadhi for thousands of years if they need, for the benefit of mother sentient beings. So these are the power of bodhisattvas who reach this bhumi. So perhaps right now, as you are listening to this part, it is hard for our feeling to arise in your mind. And the reason is we think that it seems we are talking about something far away, a story. Probably you feel like that. Right now, actually, we are talking about bodhisattvas. But we can and we will. We have to arrive at these bhumis. And at that time, we will be bodhisattvas. And we will have these powers and qualities. So that's why now we are going to practice to achieve this Bhumi. Almost certainly, sooner or later, we will achieve it. But we have to reach this Bhumi soon. Because if you are hungry, usually sooner or later you will get food, but you need it sooner when you are hungry. Similarly, we are suffering in samsara, so we have to achieve this Bhumi soon. We realize that and keep it in mind, and then when we pay attention to these Bhumis, then we have real feeling. Actually, bodhisattvas are so happy when they need to do things for others. In the sutras, it says, bodhisattvas need to be busy and have many responsibilities for the sake of others. They should be much less busy and have far fewer responsibility for themselves. Next is the second Bhumi, which is called faultless and true or stainless, pure. Bodhisattvas who reach this Bhumi will never break samaya. They can keep samaya purely, and the emphasis is on that. So these bodhisattvas practice the perfection of discipline the most. Of course, they also practice the other perfections like generosity, but mainly they practice the perfection of discipline. Then they have to purify a certain number of afflictive emotions. They don't have gross afflictive emotions, but they still have their imprints of afflictive emotions and subtle afflictive emotions, which they purify. They also purify some part of their cognitive obscurations. They have more power than first Bhumi the bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas who reach the second Bhumi are never tired of listening to the Dharma. No matter how many times they listen to the Dharma, they keep on endlessly. They never stop. They are never satisfied with listening. And when they listen through their practice of discipline. And of course, they have the realization of emptiness. And they don't have gross dualistic perceptions when they listen to the Dharma. But they have not completely accomplished non-duality. Whatever they practice is combined with emptiness. So their practice is devoid of dualistic or deluded perception. Their main realization is realizing the natural state of phenomena. And for listening to a single word of the Dharma on the natural state of phenomena, if they have to jump into a fire, they have no hesitation. So that means they have power and strong courage. These bodhisattvas can also take rebirth freely as they choose which means they can take rebirth as gods or some powerful life for the welfare of mother sentient beings, and they can remain for a very long time in samadhi. Then the third bhumi we call luminous. The reason we call it luminous is that bodhisattvas on this bhumi teach the Dharma boundlessly, teach mother sentient beings who are in the darkness of samsara. The Dharma illuminate this darkness. The main practice of this bodhisattva is the perfection of patience. They are patient in any kind of situation. Of course, they also practice the other perfections, but they mainly practice the perfection of patience. These bodhisattvas purify subtle afflictive emotions and some part of their cognitive obscurations. Their realization is also of the natural state of phenomena, but of course not completely, but some part. These bodhisattvas are also free to take rebirth in powerful lives in order to benefit mother sentient beings in ways that are inconceivable to ordinary people. They also have great power to maintain samadhi for a long time. Overall, bodhisattvas on this bhumi enact the welfare of mother sentient beings wonderfully. Next is the fourth bhumi. We call it radiant. Radiant. Bodhisattvas who have reached the fourth bhumi can teach the Dharma through their radiant wisdom light. This light burns away others' afflictive emotions and some of their cognitive obscurations. These bodhisattvas mainly practice the perfection of diligence. Though they also practice the other perfections, and they have the same powers of qualities of the bodhisattvas on the previous bhumis, only more, because as bodhisattvas progress through the bhumis step by step, the realization and powers increase. And through their increased power, there is more benefit for mother sentient beings. They can take rebirth freely in powerful lives for the welfare of mother sentient beings, and they can meditate in samadhi for a very long time. And through this, they gain very special realizations. If we were to discuss each and every one of these realizations now, I think it would be too early. The reason is we have to study in more detail, and then when we discuss these realizations, it will make more sense. Otherwise, if I try to teach more on them now, it would not make sense maybe. I don't mean that this part is very difficult to understand, but some of it is related to philosophy. If you did not study that, and then I give you some definitions, classifications, and names, some of which may not yet have been translated into English. It would be confusing, but don't worry, the main essence is here. Next, the next Bhumi is called difficult to overcome. This is the fifth Bhumis. Okay, but you pay attention. You think, oh, this part is about philosophy types. This is not only philosophy types. These are over realizations, way of over practice. So this, perhaps it's the first time to hear about the name of Bhumis. Uh, Maybe you have often heard some names of paths, but these Bhumis are we have to know, especially uh, if we are masters or spiritual masters, then we have to know this part very clearly. This is very important. The reason is disciples during retreat meditate and they ask questions. We have to know which they reach, which they are in which path, which boom they reached, right? They reached which bhumi, and then when it is ready to give like a second, if you reach the first bhumi and then still again talk about the first bhumis, that is not correct, not okay, right? So if you reach the first bhumi and then oh, now it's ready to give instructions second bhumis level, and then give these instructions, then these disciples quickly progress their realizations. Same like in path. So then the disciples, oneself, right? Oneself also should know. Even though these names you heard, these names are really liberation, Dharma words. These names are not ordinary names. So okay, so the next bhumi is called difficult to overcome. This is the fifth bhumi. The reason we call it difficult to overcome is bodhisattva on this bhumi are not discouraged. When mother thinking beings do not understand how the bodhisattvas are benefiting them. Sometimes beings misunderstand and go against the bodhisattva's help. They use harsh words, for example, as it says in the 37 practices of bodhisattva. Even if others slander you throughout a billion words, in return, speak with the loving mind of their good qualities. This is the way of bodhisattva. So bodhisattvas on the five bhumi will never give up or give rise to a single afflictive emotion. In ordinary, people were faced with this kind of circumstance, they would undoubtedly give rise to afflictive emotions. Even bodhisattvas on lower bhumis would have a hard time bearing these situations, but fifth bhumi bodhisattva can. For that reason, this bhumi is called difficult to overcome. The main practice of this bodhisattva is the perfection of concentration. This purifies their afflictive emotions and some obscurations. I often say some, the reason I already mentioned. Obscurations are like the skins of tree. There are many layers. These bodhisattvas accomplish such a wonderful merit. And from the very first bhumi, bodhisattvas believe that the merit of reciting even a single mantra is important for the welfare of mother sentient beings. For that reason, they accumulate wonderful merit. And then, of course, these bodhisattvas have the power to take rebirth in a way that benefit mother sentient beings. And their other qualities are not equal to the bodhisattvas of lower bhumis. But as you know, their realization and practices are increased from the previous bhumis. Then they also purify more subtle afflictive emotions more than the previous bhumis. The next bhumi is the sixth bhumi. We call it the bhumi of approaching bodhisattva who reach the sixth bhumi will not remain in samsara and nirvana, which means their dualistic perception are purified. More specifically, samsara is in ocean of faults, and nirvana is the land of bliss and joy. But these bodhisattvas have realized the nature of samsara to be nirvana. That is why this bhumi is called approaching. We might think, oh, this is pretty easy. Sometimes we think we understand that the nature of samsara is nirvana. But if we are careful about how we know, it is because masters say that, and then we trust them. It does not mean we know for ourselves. Our understanding is just intellectual. It doesn't mean we know. We have to manifest it. That means we have to freely experience the nature of samsara as nirvana. And then there is no attachment and aversion. Bodhisattvas on the sixth bhumi realize this and have accomplished the first perfection through the five perfection. From the perfection of generosity to the perfection of concentration. Now their main practice is the perfection of wisdom. So we shouldn't think that someone without practicing the first, second, third bhumi could suddenly reach the sixth bhumi. If we think like that, we misunderstand. Because all bodhisattvas must progress through each bhumi step by step. So we are also same. There are two ways to reach these bhumis. Some reach all the bhumis in one life. We can, if we practice very well, like King Indrabhuti. King Indrabhuti, he realized the nature of samsara. He realized the nature of the dharma dhatu, and he was liberated. About this part, it comes in the Vajrayana vehicle when we will discuss at that time more. But practitioners like these are very, very few. Because since beginningless time, they have gathered a great power of merit, and are ready to be liberated when they met with the conditions of virtue. But some have to take many lives to reach each bhumi. So everything depends on the strength of our practice. So bodhisattvas on the sixth Bhumi still practice the other perfections for the sake of mother sentient beings, but their main practice is the perfection of wisdom. And they are, of course, free to take birth in ways that benefit mother sentient beings. Their realizations are higher than bodhisattvas of the first through five bhumis, and they purify more subtle obscurations than on the lower bhumis. Next is the seventh bhumi, which is called Gon Afar. Gone afar means that bodhisattvas who have reached the seventh bhumi have gone far from fixation. They purify self-grasping, and they are far away from the mundane path. These bodhisattvas have purified fixation with samsara completely. They also have deep realization of non-duality. They practice the six perfections, especially the path of method, the perfection of skill. So these bodhisattvas can transform any single virtue or conceptual merit that they have accumulated into non-conceptual merit. So their single virtue never ending. Otherwise, the perception conceptual merit are after mutual this result, then finish. Then these bodhisattvas have many powers, and especially realization, and that come from purified self-grasping. Next, the next bhumi is called the immovable bhumi. This is the eighth bhumi, right? It is called the immovable bhumi because the mind of bodhisattva on this bhumi cannot be moved by any conception. No thoughts can interrupt these bodhisattvas. These bodhisattvas practice the six perfections and the skillful method of paramita, and then especially they practice the perfection of aspiration. So these bodhisattvas have a special power of aspiration. And these bodhisattvas have a special realization which is complete realization of selflessness. So no self-grasping will never occur for these bodhisattvas. With 99% certainty, bodhisattvas on the earth bhumi will not reborn in lower realms. And then the other realizations of practice are basically the same as bodhisattvas on the lower bhumis, except these earth bhumi bodhisattvas have a higher level of realizing and practicing them. The ninth bhumi is good intelligence. Bodhisattvas on this bhumi have special powers. Actually, there are 10 powers, but some of these powers start to arise in bodhisattvas when they reach the eighth bhumi, and then on the ninth bhumi they have more these powers. These powers are, for instance, the power over life. That means they have the freedom to choose how long they will remain. Also, they have power over seed of karma. And also they have power over necessities. They can get what they need. And then devotion and aspiration and miraculous abilities and so on. These bodhisattvas practice the 10 perfections, especially the perfection of power. This kind of power cannot compare to the powers of the Sharavakas and Pratika Buddhas and other bodhisattvas. The 10th Bhumi is called cloud of Dharma. This means bodhisattvas on this Bhumi give teachings like a rainfall from clouds. Also, their realizations and qualities are plentiful, more than the other bodhisattvas on the lower Bhumis. For these reasons, we call this Bhumi cloud of Dharma. Bodhisattvas on this Bhumi practice all the 10 perfections, but particularly the perfection of primordial wisdom. These bodhisattvas have special realization and power, meaning that the Buddhas of the 10 directions directly give them empowerment through their light rays. The next step for these bodhisattvas is enlightenment. So they will never engage in a single non-virtue. They have completely attained the 10 abilities, which are control over lifespan, control over the mind, control over the materials, control over action, control over birth, control over wish, control over wisdom, and control over dharma. Bodhisattvas on the 10th Bhumi can emanate various emanations for the welfare of mother sentient beings. They have a miraculous clairvoyance and see the Buddhas directly. And then once bodhisattvas reach the 11th Bhumi, which is called constant illumination or universal light, then they become Buddha. Okay, now I finished to teach about Bodhisattvas, 10 Bhumis, and 5 paths. And I deeply wish may all mother sentient beings achieve these 10 Bhumis and 5 paths, and they always benefit each others, and may all they become Bodhisattvas. The power of these our teachings, the power of our listening of these teachings. Thank you very much. Thank you. Chancho senjo rinpo je ma ji ban nan ji jur je ba nyam bar me bar yang gong ne gong de be war jo.
May bodhicitta, the precious and supreme mind, arise in whom it has not yet arisen. Where it has arisen, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher.
Thank you very much.